Hello and welcome to this edition of the Discover Montcalm Podcast. My name's Duane. I'm the host and producer, and I'm doing a series right now on the history of the downtown and surrounding areas of Howard City. I have Don Bauman with me here, and we're going to be talking about some of the buildings that are here today and maybe what they used to be. Were they rebuilt? Are they still standing from way back when?
Welcome to the Discover Montcalm Podcast, where we are going to look at the communities, the businesses, the attractions, and the people that make up Montcalm County. Here is your podcast host, Duane Weed.
So Don, we talked before in a previous episode that your family was one of probably the oldest to have come to the Howard City area, you being the elder statesman right now in the family. Would like to start with what we call today as the Forager, was Latitudes and was some other, the hotel and that. But if you would start for me and talk a little bit about that building, because I think you said that one had been rebuilt.
Well, it had originally where they call Latitudes. I want to call it the Golden Hotel because that's what it was built.
What year?
Family. Around 1900 they built it.
Around 1900, okay.
Before that, there was a hotel there that perhaps was the best hotel north of Grand Rapids until you got to the Petoskey.
Okay.
It was a 3-story wooden hotel, and it was called the Coburn Exchange. And it had an excellent dining room from what I understand, but the third floor was a ballroom, and they used to have a lot of dances and stuff up there. And at some point, I don't know exactly when, it burnt. And then they built the Golden Hotel, which is there today, exchanged names quite frequently. Next door to that, where you have the post office today, you originally had a garage, a car garage, and you'd go down a little ramp and you'd get into this fairly large area for Howard City, and they had a garage there, and then later on it became the movie theater. It was called the New Roxy because the old Roxy was located right about where we're standing now, and it burnt, and they built that new one over there, and next door was a restaurant or a malt shop, and Pete Aldrink ran it, and we always called it Pete's.
Okay, is that kind of where the parking lot is now?
No, that's where the post office
Okay, that's still where the post office is.
And part of the parking lot. But part of that parking lot also had a couple of huge maple trees on it. And then as you went across the street, two buildings have burnt that were there. And the one was the post office for up until, I don't know when they built a new one, but there was a post office for many years, for at least 50. And next door to that was Ledger's grocery store. And that was a family that had 2 brothers, and then they had sons, and they ran it. It was a grocery store until I would say about the 60s. And next to that, I can't remember what was in that building.
Now, is it what's called the Edgerton Giftery now? Was that the old grocery store, or was it one that had built or burnt?
The one that's burnt, where that car is.
Okay.
And all I ever remember was that those 2 buildings that you see there, the Edgerton Giftery and the Pizza, they used to be, when I was a kid, Wolverine Shoe had a factory there.
Okay.
And it employed mainly women sewing gloves. And down in the basement, they would turn them, and there were a few men down there turning gloves, but they made gloves there again until the 60s. Then next to that was Harry Lamore's dime store. And he sold that out in the 50s to Al Rook. And Al Rook put an appliance store in there and sold TVs. And that's when, in the 50s, that's when the TVs were big. And next to that was the drugstore. It was a Rexall drugstore, and it goes back in history 100 years with various different people having it. The last ones, Watson had it. He bought it from Reynolds, and after that there was a couple in there, and they had a tragic fire in the upper story of that building, and Otter Watson and his, I don't know, 11, 12-year-old daughter were both killed in that fire.
The Discover Montcalm podcast wants to thank West Michigan Technology and Design Solutions, WGLM 106.3 FM, DW Video, and Business Growth Engine. Thank you for your support.
And across the street, where you see Tri-County Community Church, that used to be the record office. And that's where the Howard City Record was printed for years. And Walt Heckbart owned it. And then he ended up selling it. And Minnie Farmer took it over, but didn't use that building. And it became the J Shop. And it sold women's clothing for many years, and was quite a successful store. And above that was Dr. Hayes. That's where he had his office. And you go up those long stairs. I'm not sure how the older people and those people that were, ailing and hurting got up 25 steps, but they did. And then next to that was quite a large structure, and it was originally it was a grocery store. And Art Crook had a grocery store in there, and sold groceries and some of the other sundries that were sold along with it. And next to that, where the dentist offices today, was an empty lot, and that was where they had the fire tower. And if you go to where the township building is, that used to be a hotel way back when, and then it became the city and county offices for Reynolds and the Montcalm County. And next to that used to be the fire station, and next to that used to be the Bauman service station. My uncle, when he came home from the war, bought that service station, had 2 pumps, and probably a 500-gallon tank at the ground, and he had a service truck. Bought that from Bill Gerner, who became the post office, managed the post office.
Okay, now that's where the funeral home is.
The funeral home,
the
funeral home is on a vacant lot that used to be there.
Okay, so it's before you get to the funeral home.
Before you get to the funeral, there's a lot of stuff crammed into that little spot.
Okay.
And that's basically takes you down Main Street. And of course, the interesting thing, if you go all the way down Main Street, during World War II, almost every house on that Main Street had a son in the war.
Oh, wow.
The first one was Crimmens's. They had 2 sons in the war. Then you went on and you got down to the far end. Bert Myers, his son-in-law, was in the war, and he was one of the pilots that when Midway, he was in the air, saw all 3 ships of the Japanese carriers burning. And then he became an adjutant general or something like that, and he served for the Navy in Canada and in Europe. And there's a book in the library about him if you want to read about him.
Okay.
His history, it's really interesting. And then across the street was Dr. Hayes, and 3 of his sons were in the Navy, or in the service. And then next to him was Gaffield, and their son was in. And next to that was Charlie Scott, and Steve Scott was in the service. Then you got the high school, and then you get to Ralph Jennings, and he had 2 sons in the service. And I don't know the house in between who lived there then. And then the next one was Blaine Hinkle, and his son was in the service.
So at one time, everybody, as you said, everybody had
well,
a
on
family.
my corner
Yeah.
of the Granis's, 2 of the daughters were in, and the 2 sons. They
Okay.
had 4.
Wow.
Yeah, and Stevers lived just less than a mile south of town. They had 4 sons in the service. One of them was killed.
Okay.
But that's kind of the story of. And
But-
then you come next to what used to be, oh boy, what was the church? Congregational Church. And before the days of the gymnasium, which was built in Howard in 34, that's where they'd have high school graduations in that church, and my dad graduated from that church.
Now, going back in that time, we didn't have 80, 100, 120 people
No,
graduate. It was a smaller.
Well, Howard City was very well known for its education and its school, and it had, 12 to 20 up until I don't know when it got to be. In the 50s, it got bigger, of course.
Right.
In the 40s, it was small. We can look at the library. They've got class composites of all of the
Sure.
schools now. I mean, graduates.
So you basically took us down the north side of Howard City, all the way down, bopping back and forth once you get past downtown. Why don't we take a moment now? Is there anything that you remember, other stories, before we wrap this up, and we'll talk in another episode about what's on the south side of Howard City's downtown here?
No, I don't know. Probably will think of something later on, but right now, probably covers it.
Okay. So on that note, thank you for tuning in to the Discover Montcalm podcast. If you have a story idea, you have family members or people that you know that could talk a little bit more about the history, whether you're in Carson City, Edmore, wherever, get with me. I'd love to tell that story so that we can keep some of this history alive. So my name's Duane. I'm the host and producer. Remember to buy and shop locally.
The Discover Montcalm podcast is produced by content creator Duane Weed at DW Video and Multimedia LLC at dwvideo.com or call 231-250-9624.